Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel, and in the video today we're looking at the Soviet Superman, Red Sun. If you've ever sat around thinking, what if Superman was a communist? Who hasn't, right? Well, want to know more? The answer was masterfully provided in Superman, Red Sun, written by famed comic book writer and member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Mark Millar. The specific comic book in question was a mini-series, 3 issues, published by DC Comics in 2003, and is a true gem of comic art. For this mini-series, Millar came up with a unique and brilliant concept. In his own words, "Instead of landing in Kansas as a child, I've decided to explore what could happen if his rocket would have landed on a collective farm in the Soviet Union. Instead of working for the Daily Planet, he'll be a reporter for Pravda. There's a reversal of the current situation. This time, it's the USA that's splitting up with Georgia and Louisiana demanding independence, tanks rolling through the streets of New Orleans. I'll be including a whole bunch of DC characters like Batman and Green Lantern, who you'll see in a new light." What inspired Millar to write such a version of Superman's history? Again, in his own words, Red Sun is based on a thought that flitted through my head when I read Superman number 300 as a 6-year-old. It was an imaginary story where Superman's rocket landed in neutral waters between the USA and the USSR, and both sides were rushing to claim the baby. As a kid growing up in the shadow of the Cold War, the notion of what might have happened if the Soviets had reached him first just seemed fascinating to me. As I got older, I started putting everything together, and I first pitched something to DC when I was 13, I think, although it was in a much cruder form, of course, and my drawings weren't quite up to scratch. With time and a lot of hard work, Millar gained significant expertise, which allowed him to, after a decade in the business, finally publish Superman, Red Sun. Reading the comic book today, one can tell Millar never really varied significantly from his original idea for the story. In the story, Superman indeed lands in the Ukraine and not in Kansas. He was raised as a proud Soviet who was taught to love and serve the communist principles of the Soviet Union, but he's still the same compassionate, fair, courageous, and fearless superhero who loves humanity more than anything. He still obeys his super hearing and responds to every call for help. His favorite habit remains saving lives. Despite the similarities, however, there are significant differences that can't go unnoticed. For example, he is not the geeky journalist that we expect him to be. Instead, he becomes a high-ranking officer of the Communist Army. His identity is not simply a private secret he hides, but a state secret that the government of his country helps him to hide. His uniform doesn't carry the popular Superman shield, and instead carries the symbol of the communist Soviet Union, the hammer and sickle. Superman is not fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, and instead is the champion of the common worker who fights a never-ending battle for Stalin, socialism, and the international expansion of the Warsaw Pact. Indeed, at a certain point during the story, Superman becomes the undisputed leader of the Soviet Union and then the world. Another relevant difference is Lois Luthor, yes, Luthor, the First Lady of the United States, married to Lex Luthor, who is still an amoral genius and remains Superman's #1 enemy. As for the end of the story, well, I recommend you read it because it's fantastic. But if you just want to get the gist of it instead of hours of entertainment, major spoiler alert ahead. Briefly, eventually Superman realizes his world conquest is wrong and tries to turn back, but he is attacked by one he thought was his ally. This supervillain is defeated by Luthor. In the meantime, Superman ends up saving the world by taking said supervillain's ship, which is powered by singularities that are about to collapse, out into space, where the singularities do indeed collapse. At this point, it would seem Superman is dead. Luthor takes back over, creating a worldwide United States, and our planet is at peace. Thanks to medical advancements, Luthor is able to live for many centuries. When he does die, Superman, in the guise of a more traditional Clark Kent, attends Luthor's funeral. Here's the twist. Fast forward billions of years, and the Earth is being destroyed by the Sun in its red giant phase. That's when one of Lex Luthor's descendants, Jor-El, puts his son in a rocket. After his journey, his son Kal-El ends up landing in the Ukraine in 1938. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please give us a like below. It really helps out. And don't forget to subscribe or share this video with a friend. There's a share tab below with plenty of options. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos you'll probably enjoy if you enjoyed this one. And thank you for watching.